Hey, I'm talking here.
Oh, here, speak into here. All right, good evening, everyone. It's 5:30. We have a lot to accomplish tonight, so we're going to get started right away. Appreciate y'all being out here today. I am reconvening the recessed budget workshop of April 12th. Today is Wednesday, April 13th. I am Laura Danchow chairing the workshop through the Ordinance Committee. We will begin our agenda today. We had a couple of changes. We're starting with the Health Department, and I see that Andrea is here. Health Department is page 31. Welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want to run through a couple of budget highlights?
Sure.
And then we can ask questions after.
Absolutely. So as you can imagine, that the health department has been wicked busy in the last year. So in terms of our increases, our payroll is the line item that's increased the most, and that's associated with contractual agreements with the unions, as well as it's taken me 7 years, but I've finally converted one of our grant-funded persons to a full-time town-funded position, and that's our health program associate. That position is filled by Olivia Coleman, and she's really my right-hand person when it comes to dealing with Raymark waste, lead poisoning, and other environmental projects. So she's now being briefed on a Bruce's Brook project, as well as the Stratford Army engine plant. So I really appreciate her in the department. There was also an increase in Greta Broneal, who's our assistant director, and that we wanted to try and make sure that she was in line with other deputy directors across the state. She is an invaluable member of our team as well. We really couldn't have gone through accreditation and just recently re-accreditation. We have submitted our application just in the midst of COVID and are waiting to hear, but she really was invaluable. I reduced some of the education travel, just, I like to go to a zero base, so I start from the beginning and identify which things are going to get paid in each category. And if I'm not needing a particular item, then off it goes. Outside services also had a reduction. We increased our clinics line item. That was increased to accommodate. For years, we had a medical advisor, Dr. Nicholas Bertini, who provided in-kind services for his both medical advice when it came to, say, he writes that medical advisor writes our standing orders for us to be able to give vaccines, as well as if we have any issues, outbreaks, or whatever, we call the physician to run things by. Our new person, Dr. Nicholas Mongillo, who we adore, he's serving both as for our pediatrics and our adults population, and he is charging us a nominal fee of $75 an hour, but it's really important that I'm actually statutorily required to have medical orders in order to do some of that work. So that line item increased, and then the miscellaneous line item is actually, I'm going to ask that actually be deleted. That's a $6,500 because I was able to work one of our grants that we get from the state. It's called the per capita funding, and this year and then the next year we got a boost from the state legislature, and I'm going to actually use that funding for this, and that money funds a new software platform so that we can be up to date. I've been using a database that I'm embarrassed to say is probably 20 years old, and I pray every day it doesn't break. And so we'd like to be able to get a new software platform.
Go ahead, Mr. Timmer.
I've spoken to Andrea about this a couple of times. The reduction in the miscellaneous line is to remove the appearance of double dipping for something which we're getting funded for the grant. So that's
right. And this only happened. I only got approval that I could put that kind of a software line item in between from when the budget was printed and now. So that's a little bit more of a reduction. So
Great, those were my two questions that I had. I wanted to know what miscellaneous was, and then I had a question on the kind of software you were looking for, and if it's something that you would choose on your own, or would you go through our IT people for recommendations, or what?
In fact, we had a not so much for recommendations, but I had a meeting today. I had made sure that IT was part of it.
Okay.
Because I also wanted to integrate with Viewpoint, which is our online permitting system, and I need to make sure that they can talk. Viewpoint doesn't do what I need it to do in terms of inspections for the health department, for food particularly, and so that's, yeah, so.
So you have an idea of the new software you're looking for?
Yes, a FileMaker Pro, and
Okay.
it's with a software package that probably at least 7 or 8 of my colleagues across the state are using, and so they have the modules. So we're going to start with food. So,
That sounds great. So the $6,500 is going to be a reduction?
yes, so
Okay.
that will be 0.
Okay, appreciate that. Anybody else have any questions for Andrea?
Well, just a comment.
Yeah.
How many years now, Andrea, have you been
Yeah.
I've
health
been
director?
the director since 2010.
So I think before COVID started, you had blonde hair, and so great job for the year.
Yes.
Yes,
a lighter
Andrea.
shade of, a lighter
Andrea.
shade of gray.
Tell them how many years you've been in Stratford.
Since 2000 and, no, I don't remember. 2008.
Starting on what project?
So I've been in with the department since 2008. I've been working on the Raymark project since 1991. I started when I was practically in kindergarten, but yeah.
We're going to give you a cornerstone on the new development there. That's right. Thank you. We appreciate it, and we appreciate all your work, all your communication over the past 2 years with COVID and the nightmares and work that involves, all the coordination and getting that information out. So that's great.
Well, we're not trying to appear sucking up, but I love working for this town.
And we want to keep you, so. Thank you so much. If there's no further questions for Ms. Bozavain, we can let her go and continue with the agenda.
Okay.
All set. Thanks very much. So that's good. We are going to move forward with community services.
Community
Tammy's
services.
here.
Hi, everyone. Tammy Trojanowski with Community Services.
I just want to tell everyone, community service, page 30. Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay. So, of course, at Community Services, we are extraordinarily honored that youth and families put their trust in us and our counselors as they navigate very, very difficult times. And let me tell you, the struggle is real. Honestly, I've never witnessed such a sustained increase in demand for services from our residents looking for youth mental health. Truly not 1 week has gone by without someone calling for assistance for counseling in recent months. So based on this need, you'll see that we have a substantial increase. I'm looking to bring on another counselor so that we can reduce our waiting list. You know, I checked again today, it's 3 to 4 weeks. And typically, when that's happened in the past, we could simply say, oh, here's another agency, or here's a private provider, or contact your insurance company, and people could get in somewhere. Maybe they're disappointed they couldn't come to us, but they could get in somewhere. That is really not the case anymore. Everybody has a waiting list, and some are even longer than ours. And, you know, I'm sure that all of you know when someone makes that decision to say, okay, I really need some help, you want to be able to respond quickly and not have to say, we can't see you for a month. So it's just not a good practice. So we're hoping that you'll be able to support us with that. We've asked for a little bit more in programs and activities. It's just to give us a few more materials to support the counselor, and it also helps support programming at the South End Community Center. And one of the things that we believe and say a lot is that prevention works, treatment is effective, and recovery is possible. So we believe that that's what our resources do each and every day. Yes, it does. So Chris has prompted me to let you know that we are now able to bill insurance, and so we are able to generate some revenue through that, and this position will help us to continue our getting money through insurance reimbursement.
So Tammy, do you have the cost of the new person reflected in this budget request?
I do, yes. It's in the payroll line item.
And this would be a full-time person?
Yep.
A full-time person?
Yes, it is.
Does anybody have any questions?
My question really isn't related to this, but when do you expect the payments from insurance to start kicking in? Like how soon can you start running it through people's insurance?
We are doing it now.
Doing it now?
We've started now, yes. We started that process of paneling and credentialing. It takes a while, and so we've started. We are currently able to accept from Husky, Aetna, Anthem, Cigna, and United.
So what type of revenue does that produce? Any?
Yes,
Does that
it
benefit
does.
us?
Yes.
And that's not reflected here?
That is in a different fund, but it is coming into the town.
Okay. Thank you.
So there's a total number reflected in the payroll line. About how much would the salary be for this one person?
I believe it's about 65,000. Yep. 65,000, yes.
And that's commensurate with everyone in that position?
Well, honestly, counselors have been under-resourced for many, many years. That's a profession that we demand that they have at least a master's degree, and we demand that they get licensed. And this is, 65,000 is really a place to start. We have been gradually moving up our salaries because honestly, I haven't been able to keep counselors for much more than 2 or 3 years, that they move on. And it's just not the best care, because especially once we develop relationships with the schools who make a great deal of our referrals, then, it's sort of like sliding backwards. But I think 65 is a good place to start. We should be able to bring on a qualified candidate.
So, Tammy, my other question is, the head count is 4. Is that where the current counselors are reflected, or are they under the head count - grant line?
Let's see. So, no, yeah, the 4. So the 4 is, so that's Ty, that's me, that's our secretary, and then, who am I missing? Oh, and Paige, who is our clinical program manager. And then the other people are sort of a combination of full-time, part-time grant positions. We also have a prevention coordinator that's included in that number. We also have a woman that partners with the public schools on the 21st century after-school programs. She's part-time school year.
Sounds great. Thank you. Everybody's starting to show up now. That's great.
Yeah. This sort of piggybacks on what I was saying yesterday when I was talking about how hard and competitive it is to find employees. In this particular case, we're looking for someone who has the credentials and the ability to, the ability to come to Stratford. We want them to stay to Stratford, but we're also looking for someone who is relatable to the town in itself. So it's going to take an effort to find the right person.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Go ahead, Mr. O'Brien.
So what changed, Chris, that you can now bill the insurance companies?
I'm sorry, what? One more time?
Previously, you could not bill the insurance companies? So
No.
what happened that changed?
So we had to go through a process of becoming licensed, and we were able to do that with our partners in the health department because we needed certain things to become a clinic. And so we have that. We also have a medical director as well who reviews our records. We've established electronic health records. And so there's a supervisory process both with the medical director and with Paige, our clinical coordinator, and that our staff are licensed as well. Yep.
The thing on the grant headcount, it's been consistent for 4 years. Is that usually federal money, state money, or just outright grants?
It's a little bit of both. We've not gotten any new grants lately.
But you can expect that to continue the way it looks for
Yep,
hopefully years to come?
hopefully, yes.
That's great. Thank you. Are there any other questions on community services? If not, we can move forward with Senior Center, which is, you can continue.
Okay, I'll stay put. So at Senior Center and Services,
I
excuse me.
just want to say again, that's page 34.
Oh, okay. So I would like to say that we are, absolutely thrilled to have the beloved Baldwin Center refreshed and open and welcoming our older adults back to Baldwin Center. Please come by anytime that you can and just see everything that's in action. The vast majority of our classes, the daily classes and activities, the monthly special programs, most of them are at no cost to the seniors. However, I am asking for a little bit more money to help offset so we can continue to offer more things at no cost, more special programs and more classes, so that we can do a few more things. So that's really where the additional money is, where we requested. Oh, okay. Do you want me to move on to that next GBTA, or do you want me?
Let's see if we have any questions for senior services. Does anybody have any questions? Concerns? Mr. Pia?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you. My apologies for being a few minutes late. Just want to say everything you guys have been doing over there since the reopening, and this council worked really hard. 4 years ago, we started on getting monies appropriated, and it's really starting to do well. And I have some clients who actively use the center, and they love it. So, just thank you.
Yeah, it's really exciting to see more activity there. I mean, when I started, no one was there because we were still closed. It was like this big sort of cavernous, empty building, and now you come in and there's people talking and laughing and there's music. It's really as a center should be. It's really great.
That's awesome. I want to try to get there to see how it looks now, so that's exciting. Thank you. Anything else for Senior Center?
So now I'll talk about our relationship with GBT. So the town is eligible for a Dial-A-Ride grant. And for the past 2 years, we've been joining our neighbors in what we call sort of a consortium where that funding goes to GBT. And what that does is it allows us to expand our transportation either earlier in the morning when our drivers aren't available or later in the day when our drivers aren't available, and it also can get people to farther appointments. So if somebody needs to go to a Fairfield or over to the VA, because if we did that with our drivers and our buses, it essentially would tie them up too long on one trip. So we have access to the GBT program, and I believe all of our partners, Bridgeport, Fairfield, Trumbull, maybe Monroe as well, are all part of this sort of consortium that we work with them. So we still accept, so if somebody needs transportation and qualifies, they still call us and we make the arrangements, because we didn't want to lose contact, we didn't want to lose the personal connection with folks. So they still call us for transportation, we arrange it with GBT. And we currently continue to offer transportation with our buses for primarily around groceries, medical appointments, and then also to and from the Baldwin Center so they can participate in our activities.
That's such a great collaboration. That's wonderful. Mr. O'Brien, you have a question?
Tammy, the 5,000 for gas and oil, is that that's a new addition, is that for GBT?
No, that's for us. So
That's for us. That's the chargeback for the gas for the bus, which goes back and forth through Public Works. Gas and oil is also considered like overall everything which goes into the bus. We may even have to use some of that either way with auto maintenance. So if it doesn't equal gas, maybe we buy new tires or a new component for the vehicle. If the auto maintenance doesn't have it, it's basically run through Public Works, and it's a chargeback depending upon what our fleet needs at the time. But the estimate for the gas is exactly what that is.
And then do your buses go to the VA in West Haven, or are you able to use the VA services?
GBT will handle. If they're not able to get, if the vet can't get it through VA, then we help them access GBT.
Councilman, you might want to save that question for the EMS, because EMS is taking to the VA now as well, and you can ask them about how we're handling that. Not for medical appointments, for medical emergencies. Yeah.
Is there a way to make that line 6157 gas and oil? It kind of looks like it's utilities. To kind of call it vehicle gas and oil or something like that? For vehicle maintenance?
I could rename it
but it would affect all the accounts that use that line item. So that line item is used for everybody that we do, it's used for everybody that we do chargebacks to, but I can rename it to vehicle gas.
Are they all using it for vehicle, gas, and oil?
Yes.
Maybe just add the word
Yeah, I can
vehicle
add the
so
word
that it
vehicle.
separates it out from utilities. It
Yes.
would be maybe less confusing. Probably not a priority to do, but if you can do that, that'd be great. Any other questions? Thank you, Tammy.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate everything that you do for our town. It's wonderful. And next we have visiting nurses. That's going to be on page 38 for those of you following. He's right here.
Well, he's walking up here. I'll say visiting nurses is another example of a collaborative partnership we've had for many years with the town, similar to what we're developing now with the GBTA. So, back again.
Okay.
Hi, can you state your name again, please, Rich?
Yes, my name is Rich Viscardi. I'm the Vice President of Finance at the Stratford VNA for the last 26 years. So thanks for having me today.
Do you mind spelling your last name?
V as in Victor.
V, I have it.
ISCARDI.
I was close. Thank you.
Stratford VNA has been in town for 103 years. We started in 1919. For those of you who don't know, we provide high-quality, comprehensive health care to patients in their home. We strive to make a difference in the community. We provide home safety evaluations for anybody in town. We do telemonitoring, medical social worker visits. We speak at the schools and health fair expos. We provide career fair internships at the VNA. And the VNA is extremely grateful for the town funding for all these years. We really are. It means a lot to us. More importantly, it's helped over 725 Stratford residents last year. We provided over 400 visits to these residents because of things like no insurance, or they're between insurances. They're underinsured, where we can't get enough authorizations. So we provide visits even without the authorizations. These people have social issues, some of them, caregiver issues, deductibles, co-insurance, and co-payments. So we do a lot of free care for many of these residents. In addition, 55% of these patients, approximately 400 patients, have insurance that does not cover the cost of our care. So in addition to the free care, it helps us provide more care for patients in town that we take a loss on. So it's a great thing. And if the funding wasn't there, we would obviously have to look on a case-by-case basis and reduce some of the free stuff that we do and the care that we provide to many of the patients in town. So that's basically what we do with the funds from the town.
Thank you for that presentation, and we appreciate having the Visiting Nurse Association with our town. Can you tell me if most of your patients or clients are Stratford residents?
No, we have about 41% is the Stratford residents of our 2,000. We do about 1,900 admissions last year. 41% would be the town census right now. 17% would be Bridgeport, and the next would be Shelton at 11%. Everybody else is under double digits: Milford, Orange, Derby, stuff like that, and Sonia.
Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Viscardi? Mr. O'Brien?
Do any of the other communities give you support like we do?
No.
Once again, Stratford's the best.
Believe me, we know it.
The mayor?
Rich, I believe that the Visiting Nurse Association, helped with our homebound vaccination program.
Yes,
with
they do.
COVID. Just wanted to make the counselors aware.
Yeah, they do that. They do flu clinics in town, amongst many other things. We're part of the Rotary and a lot of outside activities. But being the finance guy, I'm really in tune with the visits we do and the care we give. And our mission is to help as many people as we can. Mm-hmm. And being fiscally responsible so we could keep the visiting nurses going for the next 100 years, long past all of us. So we do everything that we can without our eye toward making a major profit. Everything we make goes right back into the company and back into the staff and the patients.
That sounds great. We appreciate it, and we're happy to continue to support the Stratford VNA.
We thank you.
Mr.
Believe
Pio?
me.
And thank you, Madam Chair. Rich, we've had the opportunity to work with you guys for the last 4 years that most of have been up here, and I've also experienced and witnessed what you guys have done being Chamber and Rotary for the last dozen or so years. So you guys do truly make what a community complete. Organizations like yourself, like Sterling House, it's really what keeps things going, so I appreciate it.
Well, thank you very much. I'll pass the word on to Mary.
Okay, if there's no further questions for the Stratford VNA, we can move on.
Well,
Appreciate your time.
Thank you very
so
much.
The next on the list is Sterling House, and I see Amanda is here. Come on down. So Sterling House is page 35.
Hi everyone, how are you? I'm excited to be here again and not on Zoom. Thank you so much for having us. I'll start similar to how Rich started, just in case you don't know Sterling House, but I feel like we've got some champions here. In 1931, in Cordelia Sterling's will, she gave that beautiful Victorian mansion on Main Street to the town of Stratford, the house and grounds to be used and enjoyed by our residents here. We are Sterling House Community Center, Inc. is the 501c3 that operates the building and the grounds with grateful support from all of you and from the town to keep us going. So we have, as you've heard me say probably 100 times since 2020, we've been so grateful to shout out that we've been open and serving since day one of the pandemic. You know, even hearing Rich talk, we were in our well checks with the residents who were receiving grocery delivery from us, our seniors who were experiencing homebound situations. We would tip off health and Tammy and be able to have that synergy to get that patron or that client what they needed. And so just using that as a small example, I know the mayor speaks to it often of how well we all collaborated and partnered during the pandemic and how that has fueled our continued partnership going forward. We are requesting a 30% increase, 31% increase this year after not requesting any increase for the last 2 years out of respect to COVID and the mayor's charge to keep our mill rate down. And I felt like we were crying mercy a little bit in this one. Costs have gone up so much in so many of the different areas I outlined for you here. We really try to focus our ask on the building and the grounds in terms of that joint ownership and joint liability aspect so that the relationship is clear. So a lot of those services like the food pantry we're able to supplement with grants, CDBG as well, and certainly fundraising to be able to offer those services. The other thing I want to mention is that this represents, for those of you new to us, about 11% of our full operating budget, but has over the years, I'm sure Bill could speak to it, been a very consistent foundation for us to jump off of every year, and we're very honored to be a part of the town in that way.
Thank you very much. We
Sure.
appreciate everything that Sterling House does, and like you mentioned, and the mayor's mentioned, the collaboration between all of the services that we have for our residents in town. Does anybody have any questions for Amanda at this point?
Well, a
Mr.
couple
O'Brien?
comments. One thing, Amanda, you didn't mention was
Get a
that
curveball.
if Sterling House were not used as a community center, the will states it would go to Yale. We would lose it we would lose it all. Yale would then get the building, so. And then I'm glad you mentioned collaboration, especially since Tammy's still here, because Tammy, how many times we would have workshops with people from out of town, and they were all amazed at the way Stratford collaborates, and so keep up the good work.
It really is true, and I think that this dynamic of town ownership, town building, but the nimble flexibility we can have, you know, in terms of the Success Ave and all those examples we give of just the mobilization that we can rally together. Chicka rally. So just honored to be here and honored to be on your team. Thank you so much.
Can you just speak to the extra 54,000 and how that is going to impact you for the next year? Like what that's going to be kind of used for?
Yes, a good amount of it is, unfortunately, is insurance costs, both the property and the liability coverage. We've also had to add things in this 21st century, like cyber liability, and unfortunately, places like Sterling House are common hits for those, which is a new conversation that we're having. The other aspect is the health benefits. We're part of the Stratford 4, where the health insurance is negotiated on a town-wide level, so we're able to have better rates, but it has gone up 8% as well, and our insurance package went up 19% over the last 2 years. So that is a good amount of it. In addition, the town in this allocation supports about 30% of our athletic programs. There was a good amount of additional fees, adding a gym supervisor, or we've always had a gym supervisor, a door, a person at the door checking in. That was a COVID requirement that we anticipate is going to stay. Costs of uniforms, the supply chain, all of those things. The other significant piece is minimum wage. Our refs are, you can go to, our camp counselors can go now to Target and make $22 an hour starting. And so we're trying with our youth workers to be sure we're competitive and keep them under our wing. I believe we'll develop them a lot better than Target will in terms of workforce preparedness.
Through Madam Chair, I just wanted to say that a big part of this to me is that launch of the community calendar. I just think people need to recognize how much work that really is and what a benefit that is to our community. So I just want to thank you for that and make sure everyone realizes.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought that up. We are still using quite a bit of muscle to get everyone to use it. We are seeing about 30 to 40 people log on a day, and then if we post something, it spikes to a few hundred, which is great. But getting the restaurants you go to, the places that you frequent, it is open now for-profit, nonprofit, faith-based. We want to just shout out anything that's happening in the town that is open to all residents. So thanks, Gina. I'm glad you brought that up. Councilwoman, I'm so informal. Councilman.
This is informal.
Yeah.
Committee member. Well, anybody else have anything for Sterling House? Okay, thank you.
Thank
If there's
you.
no further
Thanks,
questions,
Chris.
appreciate you coming out tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next is public safety. You've got the mic back. Public safety dispatch is on 50, page 50, I want to say. Is that where we're going?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, council persons, for being here, and thank you for having me in the middle of National Telecommunicator Appreciation Week. Thank you, Mayor, for recognizing our staff. You know the work they do, as we talk about it all the time, but they feel a little extra special this week, so thank you. So I'm JP Strudzinski, Superintendent of the 911 Dispatch Communication Center. For those of you who don't know, we dispatch fire, police, and EMS. We take all 911 and routine phone calls, so if anyone's ever dialed 385-4100 to reach police or just ask a question, you get our dispatch center, which answers the call live in real time, and then 99% of the time we get you the help that you need, whether it's an ambulance, a fire truck, police officer, a tow truck, or whatever it is you may need, or just if you want to know what time Blues on the Beach starts and what time they close the road. We get lots of those calls as well. My budget for fiscal year 2023 is a 3.19% increase, which is 100% driven by the new dispatch contract that was approved and ratified by the Town Council in November of last year. That is wage increases, overtime increases due to wage increases, additional benefits such as holidays or double time for certain holidays. Overall, it's the operational side, as far as costs go, is able to come in at 0%, absorb some of the costs of the increases in contractual obligations some of the maintenance contracts as far as our UPS, our technology goes. So I was able to do 0 on that end, but the contractual obligations drives it up to 3.19. I wanted to do 0 like I did last year, but unfortunately couldn't make it happen. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything for dispatch? Mr. Pia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question for you, JP, and maybe just because we talked about it last night with IT, but from cyber threats, does your IT of dispatch fall under the overall town protection, or do you guys operate in a separate silo, being that, you know, God forbid something attacked you guys, that could have serious impact on medical?
Yeah, sure could. And that's a great question, because honestly, we actually have 2 separate networks. We have the town network, which like my computer's hooked up to, the computers are hooked up to, so they can print on the town network. We actually now, working with IT and working with the police department, we print directly to the police department instead of the police department having to come over and get paperwork from us like they did for many, many years. But we also have the NCIC system, which is the state, it's called COLLECT, Connecticut Online Law Enforcement Electronic Telecommunications. And basically that is the database with criminal histories, DMV files, very, very federally protected. The FBI is the authorizing user of that. They allow the state police, and the state police allow Stratford Police Department, who allows us as their dispatchers to use the system. So we have dual networks, and anything on the state level is administered by the state. Anything on the local level is administered by our IT department. And if for some reason there's something extra, obviously, as you know, there's outside consultants that also help out.
Are there any other questions for dispatch?
I'd just like to comment
Go ahead,
that we worked with JP on a project to reduce the amount of mobile phones that we had that were unused in the town, which was a significant savings for the town. JP worked really hard on that. It was started actually when Jay was here, and we picked it up again. And you'll notice if you look at the town buildings line on page 18, the phone amount has gone down as a result of that. So that's what the savings has been realized. It's about $25,000 this year. And now we're in the process of working with IT on the landlines, but I just wanted to recognize you for doing a great job on that. Thank you.
I think that's good to know. Thank you. Great. Is there any further questions? Once again, a vital service for our town. Thank you.
Thank you all for your service too.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
How are we doing on time?
So,
Oh, good, good,
yeah.
good. Good, we can continue.
Done.
So, we are moving on to debt service, and that's going to be,
It's going to be Dawn Sava, the finance director, and myself. We're actually making great time tonight, and I would like to, if there's no objection, keep rolling on with the finance department while we have the finance director up here.
I agree.
And maybe
should
we
use
can
the time.
clear the deck for tomorrow.
Sounds like a plan. So now we're going to debt service 23. Page 23.
Just to highlight debt service as a whole, you'll see it's a huge, huge number. The bottom line, $34 million, $34.7 million. It makes up a large percentage of our overall budget. And it's not just debt service for the town side, it also incorporates the Board of Education as well. And you'll know that a lot of our big projects, whether it's Stratford High School or some of our road engineering work you see done, some of the bridge work done, that falls under the debt service. So if Dawn, you want to highlight some things?
Sure. So I'll just go down the list.
On debt, we have capital improvements, that is a town contribution towards capital projects during the year. We have lease payments, those are lease contracts that the town has, so those are fixed payments. We have short-term note principal and interest, which is the town borrows short-term borrowing for usually software and computer equipment, and then we pay that down every year, so that's an amount that's fixed, as well as the interest. The bond principal and interest is for all the bonding that you authorize every year for the capital, the 5-year capital plan. Like Chris said, that includes schools, roadways, other large projects, WPCA, well, not WPCA specific, but the pump stations, the things that the town owns, projects. The pension, as you know, was bonded, and that's the 2013 issue that we will be paying for several more years. And then we have the energy performance, which was a Honeywell contract that we're still paying that should be over in the next few years. So all these amounts are fixed amounts that we receive counsel from our bond advisor, or their contractual obligations.
Thank you. Any questions? Mr. Pia.
Through you, Madam Chair. Dawn, thanks again. I just want to highlight, because a lot of this gets lost, especially to the public, but if it wasn't for yourself, for Chris and the administration over the last couple of years with all the refinancing we've done of both short-term and long-term notes, you know, sitting where we are today with the Fed potentially doing at least 3 to 4 more rate hikes in a year, and the 10-year Treasury, we can actually say, because of your hard work, that we saved a lot of money going forward for taxpayers. So I'm appreciative of that, because I understand how you know, as something as 5 basis points can incur cost long term. So thank you for that. And just my only question is on the 2013 debt service. What's our projection in terms of the schedule? When will we be out of that? Just if you don't know, you can let me know.
Yeah, I don't know that off the top of my head. I will email it to you.
That's fine. Thank you.
20. Are there any other questions regarding debt retirement? This is just an ongoing thing that we have to deal with, right? So it's also a negative 0.4. So 0.4.
Hopefully next year we'll be done.
Yeah, great job, though. Thank you. I mean, I know a lot of the pump station stuff is being funded by, yeah. So, yeah. Very good. Thank you. Anybody have any other questions on this? Revenues in the beginning.
Yeah,
Hold on, let me look at it.
If we could start revenues on page...
Yeah, we'll continue with finance administration. You want to do that?
Revenues on page 5.
Revenue, oh, I see, revenue, page 5.
Revenue, page 5. I'd like to... Yeah, no. So I'd like to just start off with what I think is always one of the best charts in there, because it sort of explains how you come up with a mill rate. And for those of you at home watching, page 5 is it's a pie chart, and it shows that 81% of our revenue actually comes from taxpayers, and 19% comes from all other sources. The goal is to try to reduce taxes as much as we possibly can. So every chance we have to update the revenue line with a source other than taxpayer funded on the backs of the Stratford residents, we want to make sure we take advantage of that. A big issue, and I spoke about it last night, is the state aid, and we have to wait until we get a final passage of the state adjusted budget this year, so we can determine what the total amount of state aid comes in. And that'll help us set the right mill rate so the taxpayers won't be carrying a heavier burden than they have to. On page 6 of the proposed revenue, the first section is property taxes. It's all the property taxes we collect. They're in different categories, whether it's taxes in arrear, whether it's supplemental taxes, whether it's tax refunds, payment in lieu of taxes, and that equals $201 million, which we bring in through tax collection. This year, we're estimating right now to have $35.2 million in state revenue. Those are the state grants, and it starts off with the educational cost sharing. Includes stuff like the Veterans Added Relief. It includes the Special Education Grant. It includes the Veterans Relief Fund, payment in lieu of taxes, the Mashantucket Pequot Grant Fund, municipal revenue sharing of $5.7 million. In a total, we get $35.2 million we're estimating right now, and I have let everybody know that that will have to be adjusted when the state passes their budget for that. At the bottom of page 6, it goes over the United States government. We receive a small portion of tax relief from the government. We receive $40,000 in civil preparedness revenue for that. Last night, Susan Pollock, this is on page 7, Susan Pollock, our town clerk, talked about the town clerk revenues which we get. You'll hear from the chief of police, the town clerk revenues we have budgeted is $1.2 million, roughly. You'll hear from the chief of police. He'll talk about the specific revenues the police department receives. Right now, we have that budgeted at $128,000. When planning and zoning comes to present to us, they'll talk about the $115,000 they anticipate receiving in P&Z petition fees, map fees, the fees they collect there, that equals $115,000. The health department just went, they receive $100,000 in revenue. That includes reimbursements for things like tuberculosis reimbursement, the school health dental program. That one health restaurant license fees, health grocery fees we get. There's a long list of fees the health department receives which we book in our revenue lines. Page 8 lists a small amount we receive in fees from the Board of Education. It's $63,000. They can speak about that when they come. Public Works will speak about the $464,000 we receive in Public Works. Dawn can talk right now on the finance fees we receive at $220,000 if there's any questions on that. Our rec department receives about $15,500 in fees. We receive fees from the sanitation coupon books, inland wetlands, Baldwin Center, permits and licensings, investment income. This year, you'll notice there's a reduction in investment income because we don't anticipate the markets opening up the way they were 2 years ago. There's new laws which have come in. If Dawn wants to talk about that, you're more than welcome to ask a question on that. So we had to lower the interest investment income we get on the interest we have in the bank because of the new federal laws on that. And then we have the other revenues to round out the revenue section of our budget. All in, I think the police department, we'll talk about the police revenues when they come in here, and then we have our operating transfers as well. Do you want to add to that?
No, I just didn't know if you saw it.
Yeah. So all in, I want to roll back to the pie chart and say, it's unfortunate that 81% of our taxes come in direct payment of property taxes. Any chance we have to raise revenue outside, whether it's a service we offer or a federal program, a state program, any chance we're advocating and lobbying those outside organizations or agencies for more funding to help offset our operating budget.
So I have a quick question on that. The property taxes, is that just residential, or is that all business and residential? It's both.
It's all,
It's
it's all the taxes,
Okay.
yes.
Is there a way to separate out, or no? Just, like, how much is residential? How much of the 81%?
I'd have to look into that. We don't do, the grand list is a
It's just-
total.
okay.
I could
Yeah.
look at the grand list breakouts and try to
I just wanted to
come up
see,
with a
yeah.
number for you, but
It wouldn't
it's
be-
all lumped together as part of the grand list.
And while you're on the mic over there, Ms. Savo, can you quickly describe the state education cost sharing and how that is handled?
So the
With the Board of Ed.
the ECS, or Education Cost Sharing or Equalization Grant, is a state program. It's based on a formula, and for many years it wasn't funded in full. Recently, the state has been increasing the amount of funding to get up to the full level that all towns are supposed to be at. And so that is a large amount of money that comes to every town in Connecticut based on a formula that has to do with typically the number of students and income levels in the town. And it offsets the education line item in our budget. But it is an amount that comes to the town.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions? Mr. Pia?
Through you, Madam Chair. Dawn, question. It just dawned on me with the change in law regarding legalized gambling and recreational cannabis. Going forward, are we gonna see additional revenue line items like the Indian grant? Will there be an additional one coming from the state for gambling?
Right, we did not, to be conservative, we don't have numbers on that yet, so we
Okay.
did not include that.
Okay.
But I anticipate that we will have income from that going forward. Like you also talked about, there's a potential for the gambling, and
Yep.
also there's a very small amount of funding that we anticipate to receive, under 100,000, for NIPS. Those little nip bottles that you find on the ground. The state is a program in place for taxing those and then redistributing that funding to towns based on sales.
I usually pick up a bunch on cleanup day, river cleanup day. My husband always wants to know why someone drinks a nip and then puts the cap back on and then throws it away. I don't know.
There's only one piece of litter in that situation.
Maybe that's it. Any other questions? Mr. O'Brien?
Chris or Dawn, what's the process with school roofs? Do we pay the full amount and then get reimbursed by the state, or how does it work?
Yeah.
'Cause we've done a great job over recent years getting all the roofs caught up on the schools.
So the Board of Ed is a line item in our budget, similar to all the other departments that have line items in our budget. The only difference with the Board of Ed is they have their own bank account, and they also have other sources of funding besides what is in the town's general fund budget. So they also receive funding from other sources. And as a result of that, they give us a request every 2 weeks for their payroll and their accounts payable, and then we send them the money.
No, the question was on roofs. So we have to, it's okay. We go out, we bond for the full amount, and then we get a reimbursement from the state. We get reimbursed at about 60% right now. We have to put the money up front to do that, and there's usually a lag time in our finance office where we are waiting for the state to reimburse us, and we feel like we're out the cash until we get that moment. If you want to, did I say that right?
Yeah, we're bonding for the full amount.
We're bonding for the full amount. And when we get reimbursed, we take that money and we pay down the bond.
However, the
Mayor.
request needs to come from the Board of Education or the state won't release the money. Susan Hughes has to make the request for.
Right.
Yes.
So to go to the
So we
state-
are, not only are we putting the money up front, not only are we paying for everything in a holding pattern until somebody else decides to push the button for reimbursement.
Yeah.
Not only do we not have control over doing the drawdowns, the state requires the Board of Ed to do that drawdown, even though they do not manage or finance the programs, any of the projects. The state is very behind on auditing the projects, and they hold back their payment, or a portion of their payment, until they do that audit. So towns, not just Stratford, but all towns are kind of in a predicament of having to borrow money to cover that cash flow until it gets reimbursed, and that could be, at a cost to taxpayers to do that. So hopefully that will get resolved.
Just,
Through you. Go ahead, Ms. Rice.
how long in advance do we plan roofs and things like costs like that to do? Is it just something we do, or how much planning goes into a project like that?
So the roof usually has a average lifespan. When it hits that lifespan, we start monitoring it. We check for leaks. We have regular maintenance on it. When it gets to the point where we know that a full roof replacement has to come in, we'll begin the process of putting it in the CIP. Usually it comes as a recommendation from the Board of Education. I like to time things up with the state of Connecticut so that we can take advantage of their solar programs as well. Because if we don't have a solar panel on a roof, then I think us as a town with a high reimbursement rate is actually giving up money in the long run, because we can actually take advantage of our school construction rate at 60%, and when we include the solar panels into the building of the roof, we get another 60%. So we really take the maximum advantage we can of the roof project. So it is a couple years lead time determining that the roof is ready to go, and when it's ready to go, we like to make sure we press the button.
Okay, thank you.
Go ahead, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. And Kim, we have a roof schedule for all of our buildings, so we know when the useful life is coming to an end. But in addition, because of what Chris said, we get a certain amount of reimbursement from the state for school buildings. And that includes the solar panels, but then it makes us greener. Our carbon footprint is lowered. We self-generate for electricity, so it doesn't cost us as much to run the buildings with the electricity. That's why the solar is so important.
If you have any other follow-up questions on that, I seem to be on top of the roof stuff, and I'm happy to spend hours with you if you want to know about that. I dare you.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions on the revenue side, can we just keep rolling through with the
Yes,
finance
please.
administration?
Yes.
And this will.
So this is under April 14th. We're just going to move through because we do have time. So if you go to page 25.
Page 25 is Dawn's department.
Do you want to start there, or do you want to start somewhere else?
Sure. So I'm just going to go through these, and they're pretty standard, these requests. So for finance administration, that is basically myself and the administrative assistant. And so this is payroll and just your normal line items. Education travel is for the annual GFOA conference that's I'm required to attend. There's and any other educational opportunities. There's printing and stationery. There's contractual, well, there's no contractual services this year. Dues and subscriptions, and just other miscellaneous expense. So it's a pretty standard budget.
Do you want to continue, and then we'll do questions on the whole?
Sure, that'd
spiel?
be great. So I'm going to go to page 26, which is the finance, accounting, and treasury portion of the finance office. That includes payroll, accounts payable, the assistant finance director, our new accountant that just started, that was a position that was vacant for 2 years, and also our treasurer. So we have salary and some overtime for those two line items. We have education, which is something we're required to put in if people go to conferences or if they have, due to their union, some kind of tuition reimbursement. We have printing and stationery, which we buy check stock and for both accounts payable and payables, payroll if needed, and other office supplies. We have software licenses, that's for our Munis system, and we have furniture and fixtures if we need to buy chairs, especially we have a new person this year, so we'll probably, they'll get to pick out a chair. Sure. So next up, we have purchasing. On page 27, we have one full-time purchasing agent for the town and a part-time person in that office. So we have the payroll for those two positions. Again, we have education and travel, printing, that would be stock for paper and office supplies. We have advertising, because all bids need to be advertised, so we have to have funding for Connecticut Post typically for that. And then we have lease purchases, and the lease purchases are for copiers. They're not just for that department, they're for town-wide. And we're trying to reduce those and make purchases rather than lease, so the cost is going down. Next, we have the tax assessor. We have a full-time tax assessor, an assistant tax assessor, and then we have 4 other staff in that office. So we have the salary line items for those positions. We also have education and travel. That department does require education for their positions, so that line item is a little higher than the other departments. And then we have the audit fees for assessment, so if the town needs to hire an auditor to go on site and check if somebody has property or if something was assessed appropriately, that line item is used for that. And then we have contractual services for the software programs that we use. And last is the tax collector, which we have in that office a full-time tax collector. We have an assistant tax collector, 2 head cashiers, and then 2 tax clerks. And so the salary and line items are for those staff. Again, this is an office that is heavy in education, so we've increased that this year because we're trying to have all the staff get the certifications that they need. And then we have just standard printing, stationery, and then the other large line item is the outside service, which pays for QDS, which is quality data that prepares all our tax bills and is a software program that we use for tax collections.
That was a lot. Are there any questions on any of those departments? They're all relatively, there's no new things going on. They're all relatively maintenance-free as far as employee increases and requirements we have either through the travel or education expenses.
I just have a question on payroll, I guess. Do you still distribute paper paper checks?
So this past, during, COVID, we started to implement emailing advices to everybody. We still have about 8 people that get physical paper checks. Everybody else is on direct deposit and gets advices. There are, however, one union in particular that we met with about not getting, getting emailed, and we're still working that out with Public Works.
Okay.
So everybody else is on an email advice.
Like direct deposit, which is,
Yeah. We also started doing EFTs for our vendors. So there's a lot of vendors now that we're not sending checks out.
okay. Thank you. Anything else? I think we're going to move on then. Anybody have questions on finance? We did like all of tomorrow's agenda. We do have one more. Contingency accounts. We have plenty of time. Thank you, Dawn.
I'd also like to add that even though I don't look excited, I'm very excited to work for Stratford. I love it. I love it. It's my hometown, and I do love working here more than any other government I worked for.
Oh, wow. 22. 22 for contingency accounts.
So the contingency is a lot like the debt service. These are pretty much fixed amounts for audit fees that pays our auditors, which we are going out to bid for this year, contractual services, purchased insurance. This is the town's liability insurances. Those come from a quote that we get from our broker. Unanticipated expenses is just an amount that we put in the budget every year to use as a contingency if there's anything, other line items that go over, any purchases we didn't plan for, that's where we would take it from. Contract settlements is when we have unions that are negotiating their salary, we put a figure. We come up with a number and we put that in this line item rather than in the individual departments' line items, because we really don't want the unions to see all those individual amounts. Annual unused comp is a payout. If people are eligible for it, they would get that. Workers' compensation is an amount that we get from our consultants that we put into our workers' compensation internal service fund. Physical exams is for employee physical exams needed for hiring. The liability accounts are for our automobile liability and collision. And then the preventative maintenance contingency is an amount that we use for if there's maintenance on buildings that needs to be done. Rather than bonding for it, we use this line item. I just want to add that we work with our brokers and our consultants to get these figures, so they're usually pretty accurate.
Mr. Pia?
Through you, Madam Chair. Dawn, just the only question, the increase in workers' comp, are we expecting? I know you said we work with our consultants on it, but just curious.
So for workers' comp, similar to our health insurance, we're mostly self-funded except for very large payouts where we have insurance to cover that. So this amount is what's needed to go into that fund. There was a little bit of a shortage this past year, so that's why it's bumped up a little bit.
I think about about 2 months ago, the council approved a settlement for one person, so we're trying to put that back into the fund. And rightfully, like, when we have an opportunity to settle, we always do, because the start date doesn't change. The end date is the one you want to make faster. So the longer it prolongs, the more expensive it gets, just by the calendar, not by anything we do in between here and there. So that's why we like to have that fund, so we can settle without having to, you know, get it through. Wait for a budget approval, wait for that type of thing.
So what's the difference between what Mr. Ing was talking about yesterday in HR, physical exams, and physical exams under contingency? For new employees? So he was talking about physical exams for Mr. Mayor?
I believe these physical exams, aren't these the IMEs and anything that goes through comp?
It could, I think it is the comp. That's what my first reaction was. These aren't the these are definitely not the pre-employment physicals we make everybody do. This would have to be the comp, or this would have to be a secondary opinion we would ask for if we needed.
Okay, I was just wondering what the difference was, so that answers that. Any other questions?
Yes,
Ms. Rice?
Just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the preventative maintenance contingency.
The preventative maintenance contingency. So in the past, the town was putting money into short-term notes to cover some maintenance, and so this line item is meant to cover maintenance items on town buildings if as needed, rather than going out and borrowing money to do that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Pia?
To that point, to that question, actually, because I know this was, you and Jay started working on changing that around about 3 years ago, I believe, right? In terms of getting away from the 3 to 5 year notes for short terms. Are we not doing any more? Are we done with them?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
It was, do you kind of understand what I was?
I apologize.
Okay.
I apologize, Chris. That is, those are two different things you're crossing over there.
Mr. O'Brien, go ahead.
This is more a rhetorical question. There is no answer, but under unanticipated expense, I see natural disasters, and we're very fortunate here. We don't have too many natural disasters. And I was just thinking today about some of these towns around the country that get hit with tornadoes and get wiped out. How they ever recover, I don't know.
That's true.
Thank you. Yeah. Don said FEMA. FEMA. I know. And I do see, like, and it's the worst case scenario, but some towns get boxed in and they have to put out a supplemental tax bill, you know, to cover it. Smaller towns without the flexibility we have here. So it's an important line to have there. I mean, this would be hit with a big snowstorm. So, I mean, it does happen. Luckily, we're ahead of the game on it.
I know. Hit on something wood, knock on something wood. Is there any other questions for contingency or anything having to do with finance? We have accomplished our entire agenda for tomorrow. If there's no further questions or comments, Mr. Timniak, go ahead.
I would just, you know, accomplishing tomorrow's agenda is fantastic. If any council members who aren't here right now have any questions about anything we went over or felt like they want to ask something specific, please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or Dawn. We are available to answer any questions at any time.
Perfect. Great. Perfect. Okay, so with that, I am going to recess this meeting at 6:44 p.m. to continue on Monday, April 18th at 5:30. No tomorrow.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.